Hi, Keith.
Hello.
Hi, lovely to have you back in the Crystal Cabin.
Yeah, good to be here again.
Thank you for joining me for the continuation of your journey, your healing journey. And
Yep,
today, if I'm right, we're going to talk about emotional freedom technique or
yep,
emotional freedom tapping or
yep,
EFT. It's got lots of
yep.
different little names.
It
Yeah, so
has.
I'm going to just talk a little bit for people who've never heard of EFT, and then I'm going to hand over to you to what it actually meant for you in your
Yeah,
journey. Okay?
yep,
So, emotional freedom technique, otherwise known as emotional freedom tapping, or as I say, EFT for short, was founded by a guy called Gary Craig in 1995. So, in terms of healing modalities and that have been around for centuries, this is actually quite new. Well, quite new when you're nearly 50. 1995 wasn't that long ago. So he took a lot of work from Roger Callahan, who's another, he's more scientific, Roger. His work goes more into the scientific side of how energy flows in the body. But Gary Craig has really simplified this form and he's brought a lot of healing modalities together. So it's a combination of acupuncture, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, energy healing, and thought therapy. Okay, so basically, it's a form of emotional acupuncture without the needles, and it's designed for shifting emotions through tapping on the meridian points. Now, don't forget, our meridians are actually part of our body's wiring, which I talk about with the chakras, and the chakras being the energy centers where the energy enters the body and goes through to your meridians and all your nervous system and your endocrine and sorts out your hormones and basically takes control of your well-being. Okay, so emotional freedom tapping can be used for both physical and emotional issues, because let's not forget, a physical issue, i.e. a pain or an ailment, is actually a cause of a blocked meridian or blocked energy in the body caused by emotion that's come from a negative thought or
hmm
feeling. Okay, so we're happy with that, Keith, so far?
yep, yep,
Yeah, so back to you. We're on your journey. You've been for a couple of sessions with Reiki, you found that to help, and then we looked at emotional freedom tapping. So you didn't do this in a group with me, we did this one-to-one, didn't we?
yeah. It was 1-to-1. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
right. So talk about your experience then of learning about emotional freedom tapping for the first time.
So I'd never heard of it before when you first mentioned it, and I thought it was a bit weird. Looked, it was a bit strange at first, but it's I guess for my story, I was I was dealing initially with an issue where I thought I knew everything, and this is what I'm trying to deal with. So my mind was quite closed at the start because I thought I knew everything. And sorry, I just had to get comfy.
You go
Um,
right ahead.
so I thought I knew everything, and knew exactly what I needed to do. So at first, with every new thing that came up, I was a little bit, all right, I've not seen this before. I need to look into this and find out everything there is to know about it.
In true
Um,
Keith style.
in true Keith style. But obviously, initially, you explained it to me what it was all about, and given where I was already, I understood enough to think, well, yeah, obviously that's going to do something. Um, the dilemma I had initially was that when when you're going through the process, obviously the idea is that you're going to think of a past experience, a traumatic event, or something like that. And it doesn't have to be anything significant like that. But me being me is in the position where I'm thinking there's something there that I need to fix. Um, so the idea was, try and think of that event. Um, and like with law of attraction, you need the feeling with it as well.
Yeah.
You need to be in that position where you're thinking of whatever that event was, you're feeling the emotions that come with it, and then that's where the tapping comes in. Because once you've got that going through your head, those thoughts of whatever it was, the traumatic feelings that came with it. Once you start going through the wording that you use, obviously me and you have a chat. What is it we're going to tap on?
Yep.
And then you can sort of on the fly, as it were, come up with a script, and then you would say a line and I would repeat it and so on. And as we go through that process, we'd be tapping on the different points. So obviously the stuff we're saying is sort of targeting the NLP side of it.
Yeah.
And then the tapping is pressing on the acupressure points. So when you're first going through this, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, okay, I understand what is going on, but I'm not quite sure. Again, me being me, trying to figure out how's it doing all this. But of course, during that process of you're saying these words, you're tapping on these points, and you're thinking, how's all this going to work? While you're doing that, in your mind, you've got all these neurons connected together, which are linking these thoughts and feelings, and there's your memory embedded in your brain. And while you're doing all this, you're completely disrupting all of that.
That's the word, the disruption.
And
The
that's
disruption
it.
of the energy flow. Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening, because if you say you have got a significant traumatic event in your past, like a car crash or something like that, they're usually some war veterans. I mean, anything. If you start thinking of that event and all of those emotions come flooding back, your body thinks you're there and it's happening and it's real, because that connection is so strong. So what you need to do, you need to break that connection. And people will do this with EFT to the point where they've got the memory of what happened, but they've got no emotional connection to it whatsoever. They can talk about it like it was just something that happened to someone else almost. And that's what the tapping does. It breaks, it disrupts those connections in your brain that tie that event to those emotions, and it disrupts it all, because whilst you're going through that process, you're living that event, you're completely disrupting it with the tapping on the acupressure points and saying the lines and so on. And it although I found it difficult at first, because I didn't necessarily have a big traumatic event to work on, so I was finding it hard to think of something to bring emotions up. But then what I found was I was using it on more recent stuff. So my condition, as it were, had created a lot of anxiety about just general day-to-day stuff. So I found I could use it on that. Like we did some work on simple things like driving from home to Chester. That was a big issue for me when we first met. That was a real challenge, and tapped it away. So I found it more relevant to that sort of stuff, and it worked. And you can, as strange as it might look when you're tapping on these different points, you can kind of get away with it. I can be sat in the car in a traffic jam, and I'm starting to get a bit anxious and stuff like that, and then I can sort of like I'm sort of saying, muttering it under my breath, and I've got one hand on the steering wheel, and the other hand sort of just,
tapping on
doing
your
this sort
meridian
of thing.
points.
So and it's so at first I was doing it, and I knew it was doing something, but I wasn't getting it straight away because there wasn't that big event. But once I started focusing on those more current things, because you can do it to anything, again, it's the same principle. There was a situation there where when I thought about it, I got anxious. There's the feelings, and that's what you tap on. And once that had sort of twigged in my head, then that was it. I could use it in those situations. So
it's important to understand, for anybody listening, that it's not just for traumatic events, and you don't need to recall that event for you to then start tapping on it. Some of us are present in that event and we want to get rid of it, so you can tap it away, and it can be used on really simple things as well as massive things. So it'll help people with pain, physical pain, clearing that pain pretty quickly. Actually, the results are pretty instant, and also in emotions, they shift pretty instantly as well. So it's a simple process. It's easy to learn, and once, as you say, you've got it, you can tap on anything, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there's,
And
as well as the recipe for doing the full tapping round, we call that a recipe, there's the shortcut. So as you say, if you can be in the car
yeah,
and you know what that shortcut is, you can just do a couple of tapping points and you start to regulate your breathing and start to
yeah,
release those emotions of fear. There's been a shift in your emotions
yeah,
pretty quickly.
that's
So
it.
it's, considering it's so effective, it's quite unheard of unless you're in our circle, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and again, this is the thing with a lot of this stuff. It's so simple, and it really is. And I guess to some people it might be, well, it can't do that, can it? If it's that simple. But again, I can get into detail, but I
Oh
won't.
yeah.
But again, like you say, it doesn't have to be a big traumatic event. If you do any research yourself, you'll find the people who created it, stuff like that, will explain where it all came from. And
Mhm.
originally there was stuff like that, but you're absolutely right. Where I got the benefit was dealing with stuff that's happening now, and that as an aside, that's a significant part of my journey at the moment. Where the work I've done recently, there's been, people use the expression "the elephant in the room." Well, I'd heard of them. There was just so much stuff that whenever I was doing any sort of like, if I was just sitting down and thinking, right, what's going on, there was a whole load of stuff I was just ignoring, and it was only recently I realised that for one reason or another I was just dismissing them as well. That's always been there. Let's just leave that out of the way because it's nothing to do with it and work on the other stuff. Well, that was the stuff I needed to work on, and that's been massive recently. And again, it's because when for me, because I had this physical condition, which again, like you say, is just energy, and that's the big thing for me at the moment. Everything is energy.
Everything
Whatever
is
comes up,
energy.
whatever comes up in my body or my thoughts, is just energy, and that takes a huge chunk of anxiety out of the way, if you like, and attachment, because it's just energy. And so on my journey, the situation you're in is you've got this physical pain, you're reacting to that physical, or you've got these symptoms and you're reacting to those symptoms, and over time it develops into other stuff. So then you're dealing with the other stuff which was created by the initial issue. And so the situation I found myself in was that I'm constantly trying to deal with what started it all,
Yeah.
and dismissing the stuff that it's created along the way because they were byproducts of it, not the actual root cause. Well, I was causing myself more problems there because I had this stuff going on that was created by this initial problem, and I was ignoring it. Whereas what I've found now is with various things like meditation and stuff and the tapping is I need to work on that stuff because again it's just energy. Just get rid of it. If there's something that's not right, get rid of it. And that's what I've been doing recently. And yeah, the tapping, it's the distraction. You can the body, the mind likes to be somewhere comfortable. And if you've been telling yourself certain stories for years and years, you can sit there and have your brain take you all over the place, take you down that rabbit hole every time. And it's comfortable because it's familiar. So you can find yourself going down that downward spiral. And we talked about that in other chats as well. You can sit there with your own thoughts and go down and down and down and down. So what do you want to do to stop that? Well, you want to distract yourself. And that's where the tapping comes in.
Yeah.
And I've used it on the plane last year. Again, no anxiety at all with flying, but because of my condition, I had concerns with, am I going to be able to stand in a queue for
Yeah.
an hour, then get on the plane and sit there for another 45 minutes before we actually, all that sort of stuff, and it all plays on you. And just, a bit of meditation, a bit of tapping, it just distracts you, and before you know it, an hour's passed. It's like, blimey, that's flown by, and I've not had an issue because
Fantastic.
you're distracting yourself from those thoughts and feelings, and that's what it is. It's just distracting you. I did some research and I found something, but it's
Don't
really
keep apologizing for doing research, you. I
for
know where
for
that comes
anyone.
from.
It's for anyone who's not familiar with EFT and is thinking, well, it all sounds a bit odd. Well, it does at first. It sounds a bit odd. You're using NLP, like you say, and you're tapping on the meridian points, and you're working on stuff. Again, it doesn't have to be big traumatic events, just current stuff. You know, you're anxious about something. Well, it just disrupts and separates those thoughts from those feelings because they don't belong together. It's just energy. But for very, very quick analogy, if you like, I won't go too scientific, but you can think of your brain as in three parts. There's the amphibious brain, the lizard brain that dinosaurs, you know, where we evolved from. There's that brain. Its sole purpose is to keep you safe. Then you've got the mammal brain, the second brain, if you like, which is a bit more in tune with, say, cats and dogs, if you like, as an example. It's non-verbal, but it's part of us, part of our evolution. And then you've got the front part, the verbal part. So with things like this, if you've got thoughts and emotions tied together and your body feels unsafe, just by talking to someone, you can reassure them that everything's okay. And consciously they'll get that. But they're not going to get it deep down because you can't talk to that second brain like that. It doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
It's like when you're talking to your cat. The only word it'll probably understand is its name. The rest of it will just be blah, 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 Gemma, blah, 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 Gemma, blah. It's not got a clue that you're saying, calm down, everything's all right, calm down. It doesn't get it. But if you start stroking that cat, it calms down because it thinks everything's safe. And the difference is touch.
Yeah.
Because that part of the brain hasn't got the verbal side, it needs the physical side. So when you're trying to calm your body down, verbally isn't enough. So if you introduce the touch as well, and that's where, so the NLP side, you've got the verbal bit, you've got the words, and then the physical side, you've got the tapping. And not only are you touching, but you're touching on the meridian points.
Yeah,
so they're
that's
even
the key
stronger.
point. They are the meridian. The same points that you use in acupuncture, exactly the same points.
Yeah, that's it. So to touch those points as well is sending an even stronger message. And what you're saying is it's safe. Everything's safe. So you're calming your body down at a physical level. You're disrupting the connections between the thoughts and the feelings, and it's taking away that anxiety. And it's been proven again on all sorts of different studies that you something you can, like this, you can put in your toolbox and you can use it whenever you want. But it can also completely cure you of specific things for good.
Yeah.
It can do that much work. It can separate the thoughts and feelings from scary things and for good.
And just like to come in on that point, Keith, if I may, that it's important to recognize that when I taught you and anybody else the emotional freedom technique, it's not to go out and be practitioners. I don't profess to be accredited to do that. I'm not turning you into a therapist. I am using a tool that I have gleaned from my training to convert that to a workshop style for you to go away and use yourself as a self-help tool. Yeah, this is my logo, Think and Heal Yourself Happy. It's I teach you life-changing tools on how to heal yourself. Yeah, so you don't have to keep coming back.
That's it, and that's the key thing, because if anyone's watched Heal, the documentary you put the link out for, there's a piece in there where a lady gets some EFT, and it's only a short segment in the film, so it probably doesn't do it justice. But the key there is that if you've got something you need to work on, then you need to come to someone like you, so you can sit down and talk about what it is, and then
to begin with,
to begin with, because it can be quite scary at first. You don't know what it's going to be like. You don't know how you're going to feel. So to have someone hold your hand, if you like, and just introduce you to it and go through it, that can be a massive difference, from what you're going to get out of it if you just went and tried it yourself. So absolutely, you need to sit down with someone like yourself and be introduced to it and try tapping on a few things that you've got going on. and then you'll see how powerful it is, because it kept, like in that film, the lady got quite emotional, and I've been there myself, because it just needs that little bit of coaching from someone else to take you where it's been too painful to go before. And
Yeah.
if you can do that while you're tapping on it, you're fixing it. It's amazing.
It's an emotional release, because subconsciously when we bring things back up, we bring things to the surface. So it's about letting go, and it's
Yeah,
what needs to be done. So you don't ever apologize for letting things out and getting upset and try and stuff it
yeah,
back in again. Oh, I'm all right, just give me a minute. No, just let it go,
yeah,
let it go, let it go, let it out, because that's what we're meant to be.
yeah.
So I've got actually the manual that I give out in the training,
Mm,
and it's quite detailed, because you can actually go on anywhere online on YouTube, or have a look at these tapping recipes, as we call them, and sequences, and just go and have a go. But as you
yeah,
say, Keith, there can be a danger in that. If you are struggling with anything and you bring something up, you'll need coaching out of that situation, or through
yeah,
that situation.
yeah,
And the last thing you want is to try something that's going to frighten you, put you off, and make you feel even
yeah,
more anxious
exactly.
than when you started. Yeah. So one of
It'd
the
be a
things I
shame
want,
to.
sorry, go on, love.
I was going to say it'd be a shame for anyone to sort of try it and be scared off it straight away
Yeah,
and not visit
yeah,
it again.
yeah,
That's the
because
thing, because it
it's,
is so simple and it's harmless. It's just that, yeah, you might touch a raw nerve, and that can be a bit scary. And if you're on your own, then that's even worse. So,
you
you
have to
know,
be really responsible with it. So yeah, so in the let's call it training workshop that I do with
yeah,
you, one, the manual is pretty detailed, and while I've got it with me, I just wanted to bring our attention actually to help explain what meridians are connected to when it comes to emotion and
yeah,
organs.
yeah,
I'm just gonna, there's a table on page 3, and I'm just going to speak about it. So we're looking at tapping on certain points in the body that are meridians that will be connected to organs, and the emotional feelings that have been created through thoughts, through experiences that you've had, are all connected. It's all making a difference to how you're feeling and what you're going to think next if you get on that momentum and that
mm,
spiral that Keith's talking about. So well, as you have acupuncture, this is exactly the same response to tapping on those acupoints, but without the needles. So if you're looking at your thumb, the organ that's connected to is your lungs, and the emotion that can help with is grief or sadness. So your collarbone is your organ of kidneys, and the type of emotion is fear. The side of the eye that we tap on, the gallbladder is the organ, and the emotion that I'll help with is resentment or depression. So under the arm is our spleen pancreas. It's they call it the triple warmer under your arm. That emotion is worry and self-esteem. So
hmm,
there's plenty more here, because obviously it's a full tapping without going
yeah,
into great detail. That just gives you a picture of how the emotions that we're feeling have affected those particular organs, and how we can reach those organs and emotions to disrupt that negative energy flow and to clear the block,
yeah,
to give the shift in the energy to help you release that pain and emotion to feel better. It's all about your well-being. And even if you have blood tests, when they look closely at the microscope at the blood cells, because they're living blood cells, if they're dancing around like a river, then the energy is flowing and the body's
mm,
well-being is in a positive place. Whereas if they're very slow, very sluggish, or even at a standstill, it's an indication that the energy and the oxygen is not moving around the body, and that
yeah,
you're likely to experience. This is why you've come to see the doctor, because you're experiencing either some pain or some emotional heartbreak, and it will actually show up in your bloodstream. So it's all very clever, because obviously we know that you can have a scan. So
mm,
sometimes when they're not sure from a blood test, they will do a brain scan, and as there are different cortices in the left and right brain that respond to the opposite side of your body of a particular organ, if that particular organ is got a shadow on it, it will show on that cortice of the corresponding side of the
yeah,
brain.
yeah,
So
That's right.
when we talked a lot about the connection between mind and body, there's no separation. What's
No.
going on in the body will be recorded in the brain, and what we're thinking about has that effect in the body. But it doesn't mean that once you've got to a situation, you're stuck there. You know, by using these tools and understanding what's going on in your body, you can shift those emotions to help with your well-being, to make you feel better. And EFT, I have to say, if you look at some of the reports and some of the videos that are available, and listen to Gary Craig. I will post a clip from Gary
Yeah,
Craig.
yeah,
There are people being interviewed that have got rid of massive issues in their life, like, you know, MS even, and
yeah,
dare I say it, cancers and back pain
yeah.
after multiple operations. And I'm not sitting here saying I will cure you, but I'm saying I can show you a tool to put for you
Yeah.
to help at home on your migraines or your emotions or your anxieties, your stress, your depression, anything that you might be suffering. You can work on it.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
it.
really why we wanted to introduce emotional freedom tapping, because it sounds complicated when we first explain it, but actually it's such a simple technique to learn. You can have fun learning it, because there are parts in it where you have
Yeah.
to do some humming. Do you remember that, when you hum a
Oh,
tune?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
everybody's sitting there feeling a bit silly.
yeah,
But you know,
yeah.
once you get what you're doing and understanding why, then it all falls into place and makes sense. And then off you go. You do it without thinking. It's reprogramming, isn't it, of
Well, that's it.
behaviors?
Yeah, it's just a big. You can get to that point where you're so used to just going off down that rabbit hole, going down that downward spiral because it's so familiar, and all you're doing is just stopping it. It's
Yeah,
just stop it. And if you know that can sound quite difficult to some people. It was for me at first
yeah,
because it was so familiar. And even now, I find myself, you know, you can sit there with thoughts going around in your head. Well, do you want the bad thoughts or the good thoughts?
mm.
And I was explaining to someone, I think it was you recently, that I could go to rock bottom within seconds.
Yeah, we all can. Yeah,
But I can, because I've been so aware of that, I can catch a thought within seconds and go up that way instead straight away
yeah.
because
But
it's
we've
so much
taught you that.
nicer.
We've taught you that
Yeah,
over time,
yeah.
haven't we? Yeah. But it shows it
And
can be
those,
done.
it can, you know, like I say, we started our tapping. We were tapping on my anxiety about driving a 45-minute journey.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't even come into my consciousness anymore if I need to get out and go in the car somewhere. The thoughts that used to go through my head when someone even mentioned, you know, next week we're going to go to such a place, that was such a big thing to deal with. It doesn't even come into my head anymore.
You've
So,
done really.
and it's only when you have conversations like this and you look back and realize how much it's taken out. It's you know, it's massive. It really
Really
is.
well.
And again, it's so simple.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned the different acupressure points because I was a bit confused when I first did acupuncture because I went with a bladder problem and she's putting pins in my heels
Yeah.
and my ankles. I'm like, what's going on? But again, it's surprising. You mentioned all the different points for the different parts of the body. Well, the meridian for the bladder starts at your eyes and goes right down the back, all
That's
the way
right.
down your back to your knees, goes to the back of your knees, then it comes up again, then it goes down again, down to your feet. So it's fascinating, and
It's
this is
fascinating.
that sort of part of it is thousands of years old. What EFT's using is just tap on them because the touch thing I mentioned, yes, the touch is important because that gives you that reassurance that everything's all right.
Mm.
So to make it even more powerful, you're touching on the meridian points. So they mean something.
Yeah. It's a
There's
vibration.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's sending
there's
a
energy
vibration
flowing.
through the body. Yeah.
That's
To
it. Yeah,
shift those emotions. Yeah, there's
because
something
those
crackling,
points
Keith. Where's your microphone?
there, is it
Try and
all
keep
right?
it still. It's
Try and
doing a
keep
bit of
it still.
crackling noise.
Well,
Whether
yeah,
that's just
those
me that can hear that.
so yeah, those points are a point on a channel, if you like, where the energy flows, the frequency, the vibration, whatever. So when you're tapping on them, you're helping move it along, free it up. So it's a double whammy, if you like.
Yeah.
It's,
If I can give
it's
you,
getting all to move.
there's another example of that back in your manual on page 7, and another table. Do you like my tables? Where when we tap, maybe I just explain it right. The tapping points. If we miss out the setup statement, the starting tapping points, it's the beginning of your eyebrow here, and then the side of your eye, then under your eye, okay, and under your nose, and under your chin, and on your collarbone, and then under your arm, and then you can go off. There's different recipes for different things, but for example, going back to this, the beginning of the eyebrow is the bladder meridian, as you say.
Yeah.
Side of the eye, the gallbladder. Under the eye, the stomach. Under the nose is the governing vessel. So that's like a central, that's your M1 or your M6. The chin, central vessel, sorry. Beginning at the collarbone, kidney meridian. Below the nipple, the liver. Under the arm, the spleen again. Top of the head, governing vessel, so that's a big one. Thumb, the lung, we said. Index finger, large intestine. Middle finger, heart protector. So we always tap using our middle finger. Baby finger is the heart meridian. And the karate chop is the small intestine. Now we've said karate chop, so we're going to have to show them what the karate chop is now.
Oh, and there.
The fleshy part of the hand, just tapping with the fingertips onto. Now this is tapping out, so, and this is tapping in. Might look a bit like a monkey, but we're tapping out and we're tapping in. And then there's also what we call the sore spot, which you just feel your collarbone go down an inch, in 2 inches. It's actually called a sore spot because it is soft, and if you press it too hard, it does hurt. It does sore, but that is just by touching that in very slow circular clockwise motions. Take a breath and then go back anti-clockwise. That is sending such a signal through your wiring. It's clearing that kink in the hose pipe, depending on what it is you're saying at the same time. So it's a combination of these tapping points, the words that you use, and the breath that you're using as well. So again, you can do the full recipe and repeat it, or you can, if you're out and about, you can do quick shortcuts as well. So there's quite a bit to learn. Well, once you've got it, it just comes naturally and you don't need to think twice about it. Would you agree with that, Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. Once you've done it a few times, and you know, trial and error at first, you might do a bit of tapping and realize you missed one of the points or whatever. But once you've done it a few times, it's second nature. And then you find yourself like me, sat there listing all. Right, I'm going to tap on all these different things, and then working your way through them. But
can I just come in on that, if you don't mind, when you say all these different things and work your way through them? Sorry to interrupt, but it's just, you know what I'm like, comes in my mind, I have to pop it out of my mouth. You're used to me now. When we're using it in weight loss, for example, it's very effective in weight loss, because not everybody wants to use, say, hypnotherapy, so they'll come and do this consciously. When you're tapping through the different things, what that can mean is, if your main issue is weight, there are aspects of weight. So the aspect might be you don't want to buy new clothes, you won't go out socially, you'll get undressed dark, you won't go to social events, and so on and so forth. So they're aspects of the problem of weight.
Exactly.
So you start on the main aspect first and tap your way through that, and then work your way through the clothes, and then the social aspect, and it could be the physical aspect of how you view yourself in the mirror, because that's a big thing for people who are not comfortable in their own skin. That can make a massive difference to self-love, can't it? So
that's exactly it. It's you can have an issue, and like you say, there's a whole list of issues that causes. So treat them all individually, because yes, you might have a hang up about the way you look. So tap on that. You might have an issue about what other people might think of you. Tap on that. Because again, it's just a thought that's got some energy around it causing these emotions, and you're just disrupting that. You know, there's so many things that I used to be hung up on, and they've just gone. There's you know, and I look back now and think, I used to worry about that sort of stuff. It's just not there anymore. And there's not even a twinge, you know, I just don't even go there, because I've got rid of it, and tapping's one of the things that's done that.
to be used to release it. Brilliant, Keith. Fantastic. Now I'm just conscious of the time because we
Yeah.
can talk, you and I. So
Yeah.
we're gonna keep it there. That today I think is a good introduction to what emotional freedom tapping is, what it can do
Yeah.
for you, and how it's worked for you. The whole point is your
Yeah.
journey. You're a real person. You've used it. It's made a difference to you, and
It
you've come
works
to share that
absolutely.
with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. Much appreciated.
No, thank you.
And if anybody wants to ask questions, Keith, are they all right if I post this in the group, and are they all right to just ask questions
Yeah.
for you to reply to? If they don't want
Yeah,
sort of
sure.
like a therapist take on something, they want a human take on something, if
Yeah.
you like,
Yeah.
they can just ask you
No,
questions.
absolutely. Yeah, not a
Okay,
problem. Not a problem.
that's superb. So we need to have a little think about where we go next, don't we? And what we're going to
Yeah.
talk about next time.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we'll get together and do that. So stay tuned, angels. Thank you for joining us in the group with Crystal Cabin, Conversations from the Crystal Cabin with Keith. They are all curves there. It's a bit tongue-tied. And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon, lovey. Take care. Thank you.
thank you.